Hey everyone, Dieter here, also known as RCD Butts, and right now we're going to talk about the Scorpion Opto Cable that you use in conjunction with the Scorpion V-Series ESCs, as well as the V-Bar flybarless controller. Because the V-Bar, it needs a reading in from the motor so that it can sense the RPM and work the governor. So what you need to do is plug in some sort of phase sensor. So what you're going to have to do to get this set up is actually make a few little alterations to it. What we're going to do first is we've got these white, red, black cables. We're going to pull the white one out. You just flip the little tab here on the servo connector and then pull that white cable out. And I'm going to kind of give that a little bit of extra length. And what you want to do is actually buy another one of these little connectors and plug this cable into the end here. Just make sure you've got it set up right. Okay. Push that in there, and you want to make sure you get that pushed in good and hard here so that it's going to plug in all the way. If you're having glitches and issues with your V-bar, check that connection, make sure it's going in all the way and that it's all set right there. Okay, so we're going to plug that in to the V-bar in the RXA channel, pointing with the signal, the white cable, towards the top. I'll actually show you a little drawing diagram here of how the signals work, and then I'll show you the setup on the helicopter. But with these other two, you're going to have to provide power to the phase sensor, especially if you've got a 12-volt system. I've heard, you know, some systems 10-cell or 12-cell systems. Sorry, that's what I meant. If you have a 10-cell system, you might not need the power to the sensor, but for me, I needed the power, otherwise the governor wasn't working. So, and also the limit on your power here is 6 volts. You don't want to have any more than 6 volts. So if you are plugging into your V-bar and you have a 7.4 voltage output of the BEC from your Scorpion ESC, because you have HV servos and you want to run that high voltage, then you can't run a Y cable. You have to step down the voltage into this, or just tap the voltage from the receiver port, which always comes out as 3.3 volts, which is good for powering up the opto cable. So that's what I'm going to do. If you're just running the 5-volt output or an output out of the ESC that is under 6 volts, then you're good to go. You can just use a Y harness when you plug into the receiver. I think the RXC channel is what you could use. But if you're going anything higher than 6, just remember that it has to be stepped down somehow here. So here's the drawing of what we're doing. We've got the mini V-bar set up here. The channels are the RD, which is obviously going to be the rudder. Cyclic servos are obviously plugged in here to channel 1, 2, and 3, which are described in the setup. When you set up the helicopter, that's a different video altogether. What we're going to talk about here is the Scorpion ESC setup. So the Scorpion ESC has this little red cable coming out of it. You usually use that. You can program the USB with a PC, or it also doubles as the phase sensor cable. So you're going to plug in the opto cable, this guy, this end of it, that you can see it says on here to ESC. So the one that says ESC and points the arrow out to the ESC right there. Plug that into the red, the short red servo or output of the ESC. That goes in here, and like I said, the white cable, this one that we made here, is going to plug into RXA. RXA is not for power. You don't put power on this. If it's a full-size V-bar, there's going to be a different setup. There's one side that you don't put power on, but for a mini V-bar, which is what we're using right here, plug the signal in with the white facing to the top and no power. If you plug it in like that, you're just actually not going to be applying power to your opto cable. But best thing is just cut the red wire instead. You just don't want anything plugged into there that could possibly have power on it. So signal in with the white up. This here is going to plug into, see, in my situation I'm doing the 7.4 volt output, and I'm also using a Spectrum receiver, so I actually had to kind of do a Y cable thing here. So my receiver out, I took the 3.3 volts from the receiver to supply power to the opto cable. Actually what I did is I cracked open the case on one of the satellites, and inside here on the board next to a couple inductors was the ground and 3.3 volts. I ohmed those out, and they also correlate. Over here the line's 3.3 ground, and then I think the third is a signal channel. But I tapped into that to get my 3.3 volts out to my opto cable here that was plugged into the ESC. If you are running under 6 volts, like I said, you can just do a Y cable here from the receiver C, because you know the ESC here has this second power supply, so you can get all the current you need from the BEC here out of the Scorpion ESC. So the second power supply, you're also getting power here on the ESC throttle channel. So the 2-wire cable that's going into the power, you can just do a Y connector right here and plug the power into one and plug the power for the phase sensor into that. But like I said, I'm doing 7.4 volts, so I'm tapping into the 3.3 volts out of the satellite. And I've still got the 2 satellites out here. It's okay to do the Y connection and tap out of the voltage of the satellite. So that's the setup we've got. I'm going to show you here on the helicopter what it looks like, and that is basically how you plug in the opto cable for the Scorpion ESC and the V-bar flybarless controller. Let's see if I can get a good picture here. Okay, so this is the helicopter and the setup that I have going. Like I said, I'll do this here, lay this on the table. The red, see this little red cable coming out of the ESC? That is the one that plugs into the opto cable. Make sure you line them up. I think orange is signal here and white is signal. And I think it'll actually only plug in one way. See, yeah. If you try to plug it in the other direction, it shouldn't work. So don't force it. It should go in nice and smooth the certain way. And then that opto cable here, split here, the power is going into my satellite receiver, or coming from the satellite receiver rather. So as you can see here, I put tape over it, but I cracked the case open here and I took the 3.3 volts out of that. So I still have my 2 receivers so I can do the Spectrum setup. And then I've got, with that, the power going here, and you can't really see it because I've got the case on, but RXA with the white signal facing up is where the other signal of the opto cable is going. So that's the setup.